I'll hand over to Andrew first, and then he'll come back to me. Andrew Mohuish.
Okay, thank you very much, Deputy Leader. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the last Executive Advisory meeting of 2021. Hopefully today there will be no technical problems. If there are any technical difficulties during the course of the meeting, we will adjourn the meeting and reconvene, but hopefully that won't be the case. Just to say today that any of the recommendations that you make today as the Executive Advisory meeting will then be forwarded on to the leader, and he will take the final decision in line with the powers he has vested in him in the Constitution. Just also say that a copy of this recording will be made available on the Council's website within the next 2 working days. I'll hand back now to you, Deputy Leader, and just to do some quick introductions to make sure everybody on the Executive can see and hear. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Andrew, and welcome everyone. I'm Councillor Jill Slocum. I'm the Deputy Leader of the Council and Portfolio Holder for Inward Investment and Growth, and I can see and hear everything. Can I now go to Councillor Caswell, please?
Yes, good morning all. Mike Caswell, I can hear and see everything.
Thank you. Councillor Lance Dudridge.
Yeah, good morning everybody. Councillor Lance Dudridge, and I can see and hear everything clearly.
Councillor Andrew Gilling.
Good morning all. Councillor Andrew Gilling, Portfolio Holder for Housing, and I can see and hear everybody very clearly.
Councillor Mark Healy. He was here. Councillor Healy? I may have a problem. Okay, I'll go to Councillor Janet Keane.
Janet Keane, I confirm I can see and hear everything and everybody clearly. Thank you.
Thank you. And I welcome Councillor Brian Smedley and Councillor Bill Revens. Councillor Smedley being the leader of the Labour group and Councillor Revens being the leader of the Liberal group. Thank you very much. And other members of council that are present here today. Can I now go to officers to introduce yourselves, please? Can I go to the Chief Executive?
Good morning, Bob Brown, Chief Executive. I can hear and see everything. Thank you, Deputy Leader.
Thank you. Mr. Bamsey.
Good morning, Doug Babs, Deputy Chief Executive. I confirm I can hear and see everything.
Thank you. Mr. Hellard.
Thank you. Yep, Steve Hellard, Deputy Monitoring Officer. I can confirm that I can see and hear everything. Thank you.
And Mrs. Turner.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Alison Turner, Strategic Director and Section 151 Officer, and I can confirm I can see and hear everyone.
Okay, I think, is there anyone else that we need to, anyone else I've missed? I believe that Councillor Healy, Andrew, could you just check? I think Councillor Healy is trying to get in, but he's having a bit of a problem.
Okay, we'll have a look at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. He is here. He was here a minute ago, saw him, but he's clicked off. So, okay. Can I also welcome other officers? Mr. Craig Wilkins, can you just confirm you can see and hear us?
Yes, I can, Deputy Leader.
Thank you very much. Other officers, thank you so much. And Tanya Mantha?
Yeah, I can confirm I can see and hear everything.
Thank you. And other officers, obviously at the time we'll call you, so just let us know that you can confirm. Thank you very, very much. Over to you, Andrew.
Over to you now to run through the agenda as published.
Thank you so much. I tend to dip in for you, Andrew. I do apologise. Okay.
That's not a problem at all.
All right, thank you very much. So item 1 on the agenda is apologies for absence. We have the Leader of Council, who is still unwell at the moment. And we have Councillor Mark Healy with us. Councillor Healy, can you hear us?
Yes, sorry about that. Something went over the proxy server, went a bit awry, so I had to relink it, but I can clearly see and hear everything.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Healy. And you're the portfolio holder for asset management. So yeah, thank you.
Asset management. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 2 is the minutes, to recommend the minutes, confirm the minutes of the executive that was held on the 3rd of November. Is everybody happy with the minutes? Thank you. No adjustments. Everything's fine. Thank you. Item 3 is declarations of interest. Do we have any?
Yes.
Councillor Keane.
Excuse me. On the item 7, I'm a board member of Homes in Sedgemoor, but within the budget, when there are outside bodies with a line in the budget, I am also a board member of Citizens Advice. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Keane. Do we have any others? Could
Yeah,
I?
please,
Oh,
please,
Councillor,
Deputy Leader. Yeah, similarly to Councillor Keane, item 7, I'm a board member of Homes in Sedgemoor.
thank you. Do we have any others? Thank you. Could I also apologise? I must welcome also Councillor Bradford, our Chairman of Council. I welcome you to this meeting, Councillor Bradford.
Good morning, everyone. I can hear and see everybody quite clearly.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Item 4 is urgent business. I believe we have no urgent business at this time.
We have one item of urgent business this morning, Deputy Leader, which will be the IT capital bid report for which Craig Wilkins and the portfolio holder, Councillor Dudridge, will present after item 8, and that has been circulated to members.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Item 5 is public speaking time. I don't believe we have anyone.
There are no registered speakers at this meeting today.
Okay. Item 6, thank you, is to consider the high level budget report. And I think it has to be said, I think we must remind members that this is the last budget we have, and the next one obviously will be April 23. We've done considerably, absolutely amazingly well. The business rates pool has been approved, and the final settlement figure, which will be in January. So I have to say, I think we're in a very, very good and fine position. But can I hand over straight away now to the officer, which I'm so sorry, I'm scrolling down because it's like that, isn't it? Can I hand over to Alison Turner, please? Sorry. Thank you, Alison.
Thank you, Deputy Leader, sorry. So this is the Leader's High Level Budget Report. As you'll remember, because it was only last week, which is really unusual, the medium-term financial plan was presented to Executive last week, where we went into quite a lot of detail in terms of our financial position and our potential funding gap and balances. And that was a 3-year medium-term financial plan as opposed to a 5-year one, because clearly with local government reorganisation from the 1st of April 2023, Sedgemoor won't exist anymore and all of the budgets will be into the one Somerset. But what we're presenting to you today is the 1-year budget, effectively. So it's the Leaders High Level Budget Report that presents the 2022-23 budget. And as already said, this will be the last budget as Sedgemoor District Council. What we're presenting to you today is not the final figures, because we still require the final settlement figures, which will be in January. And I'll hand over to Tanya in a second, just to for Tanya to explain to you what came out in the provisional settlement figures on Thursday, the 16th of December. But just there's a couple of items on this report I just wanted a highlight for you. Firstly, we've still got the approach that we adopted some years ago now, which has been successful for us in terms of our managed use of balances. So we've got 8.7 million still in our specific reserve to help us balance the budget over a 5-year, over a medium term period. So we've still got that strategy in place, and actually when the one council happens from vesting day, all of those budgets from all the districts and the county will be added together. So it's right that we carry on doing a budget beyond the vesting day, so that we've got a clear picture of what we're taking to the new authority, if you like, financially. And just in terms of the balance in the budget, we've still got the work that we're doing on the customer access programme in terms of delivering savings. There have been some significant changes to that with the impact of COVID and also the impact of LGR, but there are still savings built in to help us with balancing the budget. And also there are the savings that are expected from the Recycle More waste contract. And again, that is still rolling out, although those savings won't come into fruition until April 2023 now, but they are in the budget as presented. There's just a couple of items that I want to draw your attention to, and actually they will be finalised within the tax set report, which will come to you in February. But we've already highlighted in the medium-term financial plan the additional funding required for local government review, and that's Sedgemoor's percentage of the implementation cost of 16.5 million. But in addition to that, and we're working on this at the moment, we will need to put some additional resources in for Sedgemoor, because we've got lots of staff that are working on the reorganisation, and we will need to backfill and make sure that there's enough resources in place to deliver our commitment to LGR, but also maintain our services to the public at the standard that we are proud of. So we will need to build some additional budget in there, and as I said, we're still working on those figures, but they will be ready for when we set the tax. We've also highlighted that actually there's a massive change, a massive impact for staff as we go through the next sort of 15 months, and we want to make sure there's sufficient budget in place to support staff with training and other sort of well-being needs. So we're also looking to put a budget in for that. And the final thing is just in terms of community projects. So we've got quite a lot of projects that are ongoing at the moment, and we need to make sure that those are reviewed so that when we go over to the new authority for investing day, we've made sure that those assets, those projects that we're working on are complete or secured, so that our community are still getting the services that they're used to getting from us as Sedgemoor as we go into the new authority. So there are a few areas where we still need to do a little bit of work on the figures, but we've highlighted them in this report as issues that we're working on, and those figures will be available for February. I don't think there's anything else I need to add to this report, because as I said, that a lot of the detail on the figures was presented to you last week. But I'll hand over to Tanya now just to update you on what came out of the provisional settlement last week. And as I said, just to say that the final settlement will come out in January, but doesn't usually change significantly. So it shouldn't have a huge impact on the figures. Thank you.
Ms. Turner. Thank you. Tanya, over to you.
Right, so as Alison said, the provisional finance settlement came out last Thursday. And what normally happens, they give us the big figures, and then they'll trickle out figures over the next few weeks, which are smaller grants or specific. So those don't usually have a massive effect. So the big ones they've announced. So if I run through very quickly, I'm not going to go into like the minutiae of detail on it, but very high level. So new homes bonus was slightly less than we thought, 73,000 less. But that goes into a specific reserve, so that doesn't actually affect the bottom line, but it just means there's slightly less to do specific projects. Local services support grant, that was a new grant last year, and when I did the MTFP, I assumed it was for 1 year only, so I took it out for this 22-23. Actually, they've carried it on, so that's a bonus of 159,000 for that. There's a brand new grant called, it's a very exciting name, not really, 22-23 services grant. So I'm assuming that will definitely be 1 year only, and that's 245,000. Since the settlement early this week, I've had the figure come through for the housing benefit admin grant. So that's a really good news thing. Normally with housing benefit admin grant, over the last few years it's reduced. So in the MTFP, I always reduce that each year in line with what's the trend over the previous years. But it's really good news this year. So they've actually increased 21-22's grant by inflation. So actually what that's brilliant is the amount I took out, I can put back in, and there's inflation. So that's £42,000 more. So that's really, really good. With business rates retention, it's in the MTFP and it's in the leaders high level. They did announce in the spending review that they wouldn't be increasing the multiplier this year to help businesses. So obviously that means that technically we won't get an increase from business rates, but the government do compensate that for us, and we get a Section 31 grant for it's called under indexation of the business rate. So actually we should get some compensation for that. It's very difficult to quantify at the moment. They did put a figure in the settlement, but that's only based on the baseline funding, whereas obviously we've got a lot of growth above baseline. So actually it would be on that as well. So until I do the NDR1, I wouldn't like to say what that figure would be, but we will get some compensation. So in all, that has had all of those things is in 22-23 only, we're better off by 455,000. Obviously there's still several things that we need to finalise before tax set. So those things are, we haven't had the final waste figures yet, so obviously we've built in some increases for waste based on what went to their board, I think back in September, October time, but we haven't had the final waste figures, so that could change the MTFP figures up or down. We won't know until we get them. The NDR1, we don't have to feel, that's the return you have to do for the business rates to say what you think you're going to get from business rates, and we don't have to do that till the 31st of January, and it was only issued late Friday night, so I will be working on that early January to try and get a rough figure of where I think we are with that. Council tax surplus deficit, we have to calculate that on the 15th of January, so I won't know that figure until then. So I've built in something into the MTFP, but it may change. And drainage board levies, of course, we don't find out those till February, and we built in 2% in the MTFP for an increase, but it may be more than 2%, so we won't know that until we get the those figures from them. And another admin grant that we get, the council tax support admin grant. Again, I always reduce that in the MTFP based on previous experience. So hopefully it might follow the same as the housing benefit admin grant, and we may not have to have that decrease and have perhaps an inflationary increase, which would be really good. So that's it really. So that's quite a whistle stop tour. So basically the message is for 22-23, we're so far, with all the caveats, 455,000 better up. That's a really good news story. So yeah.
Can I just thank you, and Mrs. Tanya? That is really an excellent good news story. And how many authorities, I say this every time, would like to be in our position? So that's excellent news.
Yeah.
Do I have any questions, please, from anyone, or any comments? Don't want to miss anyone. Okay. We don't have any. We have two recommendations before you to consider and support maintaining the revenue balances of at a minimum of 1.5 million, allowing the additional balances detailed in section 5 to be used for achieving a balanced budget or up to vesting day. And item 2 is to consider the proposals for balance in the medium term funding gap as detailed in the table 2, which I have to say is very well done in the report. Thank you. I think the explanation is done very well. Do I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that, Deputy Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Healy, to second that. Is anybody against, please? No, I think that's Andrew. Over to you, Mr. Sorry, Andrew, I'm nicking your words again. Apologise.
No, that's okay. Thank you very much, Deputy Leader. That clearly, those two recommendations are clearly unanimously carried. So those recommendations will go forward to the Leader of Council for him to consider and make his decision later today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And can I again thank you both for the work you do on our accounts and looking after us all in a very, very good way. So thank you very, very much. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the, it's Mrs. Turner again, and it's balancing the housing budget revenue account 30-year business plan. So without further ado, I will hand over to Mrs. Turner.
Thank you. Janet and I are going to do a bit of a double act on this report. I don't propose to go through it in detail because it is a very detailed report anyway, and I'm sure everybody's had a chance to read it. I guess the first thing I'd say is it's another positive story. The housing revenue account, as a lot of you will remember, several years ago was in a very different position to what it is now when we had the rent cut. But over the last couple of years, with the borrowing cap being removed and rent being allowed to be put up, we've seen the housing revenue account sort of transform into a financial position which is allowing us to do quite a lot of the things that we wanted to do in terms of our ambitions. I mean, there's never enough money to do everything that we want to do, but it's certainly in a good position. where we've been able to sort of include payments for paying off our debt, because at one point we were just paying off interest and had no way of paying off the debt that we'd taken out as part of subsidy. So you know, it is a positive position. We've got quite a lot of growth that's been built in here. We're still maintaining decent home standard, and we're also looking to sort of do a pilot project, and also we've got new development in there. So it is a really positive position. If I take you down to the first table, I just want to draw your attention to is table 1 on page 5, where we just show you there what the balances are, and there's the base case balances, but we've also got the scenario A1 balances, which has got the growth requested included, and you can see there that, you know, over the 30 years, because it's really important with this business plan that we don't just look at 5 years, we look at a 30-year business plan, and that, you know, the balances are looking positive, which is a good position. As I say, there are lots of initiatives, ideas, things that we want to do in terms of our stock and the housing revenue account, and we wouldn't be able to afford everything, but we're certainly in a position where we can carry on doing some of the exciting things that we're doing, and also do some additional things. As I said, I'm not going to go through it all in detail. I'll just say with section 3, which talks about the capital, we've got some growth items built into that capital request, but it's also maintaining decent home standard. At the moment, only 40% of the stock has had the condition survey, so hopefully we'll be in a position where all of the stock has been a condition survey has been undertaken for all of the stock in the very near future, which could give us a much more accurate picture of where we are with the stock. And it may be that we come back to us for some additional funding. We've also got built in here a supplementary estimate and then ongoing budget for purchasing, repurchasing of ex-council houses. You'll probably remember that several years ago, to actually make sure that we spent our right to buy receipts, we were having to repurchase ex-council houses. But actually, with our development programs now, we spend that easily, which is a really positive story. But we do need to still have a budget to strategically buy some of those properties back. So that's why we've put a recommendation there to put £500,000 in. But it's certainly not in the same context as we had before, where we had to do that just to spend the right to buy receipts without them having to go back to government. Those are now utilised on our new development, which is really good. Section 4, where it talks about the housing management fee, I mean, that we add on inflation to that, and there's also the growth that is requested if an additional service is required through homes in Sedgemoor. As I said, when the housing revenue account was in a difficult financial position, we weren't even able to put any increase on that. In fact, there were some reductions. So, you know, that's quite that illustrates really what position we're in now, and that's really important. Homes in Sedgemoor as our sort of provider of these services, you know, if they're asked to do provide additional services, then, you know, often funding is required for that, which we're able to support. I'll hand over to Janet now just to go through some of the other sections within the report, and I'll just come back right at the end. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alison. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so yeah, picking up after capital and the management fee. Of course, the HRA's primary source of income is the rents and service charges. So Sedgemoor has always followed the government advice for the way that rent should go, be it up. And it wasn't that long ago that there was actually the rent cut period for 4 years, which were progressive rent cut periods, increasing each year over that 4-year period. Next year, the rent following the government's proposed increase is at 4.1%. That is using the government's formula of September at CPI, which was at 3.1% plus 1%. What I would say, everybody's aware that inflation, well, it's still going up at this particular point in time, but we have always followed the government advice on this, and we are now under the rent regulation regime. So, you know, whilst it seems like quite a lot, we are following government advice, and it's worthwhile to remember that no rents are above the local housing allowance. So any tenants that actually are on benefits will have that increase covered by that, and a lot of them are on benefits. So yeah, moving on into the next section, we're talking about the right to buy. The business plan has to take into account that the right to buys diminish our stock. So clearly that means whilst there's a benefit of not having to maintain those homes, that we have also lost the ongoing revenue from those properties. So over the last few years, we've estimated at around about 20 sales per annum, and sales to the end of September were at 10 for this year. So we always keep that under review. Clearly it's demand led. What I would say, whilst we get the receipt from the sale of the property, it's hugely diminished by the fact that there's the right to buy discount that the tenants get, and some of it has to go back to the government and some of it's for paying historic debt. So we don't actually get too much to reinvest in the stock. Nevertheless, that is what we do. And it was pleasing that in the last 2 years, our new build development programme has meant that, well, 2 years ago we had a net gain of 4 properties, so 4 more than the sales. And then last year we had a gain of 1. So whilst not a lot, we've still been moving in the right direction, and there's still more new build in the plan. As Alison's talked about, like the borrowing cap went, so that meant, as is back in 2018, we were able to finance a lot more within the business plan. Without that flexibility, we wouldn't be able to do as much as that we're doing now. So to be able to fund the growth that we've got in this plan and you know, maintain everything else means that you know, we have to look at the debt every time. So, you know, we do need to do more borrowing to be able to finance the plans. But what I would say, reiterating like the fact that Alison had mentioned, the stock condition survey forms how much we spend on our stock. And at this particular point in time, there's 40% of the stock done, and there will be 100% done in the new year. So we will have better figures throughout the year. So all the growth and so on is concentrated primarily on next year, which also ties in with local government reorganisation. So I'll just quickly talk about the growth bids. We have got, and this follows on from growth bids that we've had for the last couple of years, some ongoing support just because of the rolling out of the supported housing regime for sheltered housing. So that's contained in there. So the service charges have been reviewed and they will go up, and that is offsetting some of this increase. And we need the project manager for another year to just drive forward the final rollout of that service. Then what we've also got on the revenue side is a number of bids all to do with compliance. Now everyone's fully aware of the terrible tragedy in London of the Grenfell House tragedy and the whole compliance regime that's come out from that. So a lot of work has been done, partly as a result of the current stock condition surveys and so on. So some work's come out of that, but there's also a need to have some new posts in there. So there's a new surveyor post and so on. So those are included in there, along with some other bids for compliance, including building safety training and a 3D scan of Westfield House. Yeah, we have the ongoing ones in revenue, whereby we need electrical testing to be done much more frequently than was in there before. We have got a compliance fire door inspector and a new compliance manager. And then we have as Alison's mentioned, on the capital side, the recurring growth bid of £500,000 for the repurchase of ex-council house properties. The other one-off bids that we've got for capital next year, which will probably need a continuation budget thereafter, but we need more detail from the stock condition survey, is and these have been prioritised kindly by Homes in Sedgemoor, is fire and safety cladding. That's clearly priority 1. We've got some work for Westfield House and balconies to ensure that they meet compliance standards. And we also have a one-off bid for a small pilot project for achieving net zero carbon works. Now, Homes in Sedgemoor have provided a lot of information for this, and this is contained within the appendices, so you can find out more. But I think with regard to the net zero carbon works, we'll have more information about that in next year following more stock condition works and so on. But also I know there's a lot of work being done to consider whether there's any alternative grant funding and so on, because that will be a huge expense, not just for this council, but any landlord across the country to make their stock green. So, you know, that is going to be a big spend in years to come. But I think really we need to look into grant funding, and hopefully the government might come up with some grant funding schemes. So moving on, we've got the housing development. Just to say, as members already aware, this is the first time that we've got the budgets in for Bigwood and Staple. That includes the Homes England grant funding. So that is good news, because that's the first time we've been able to secure any grant from them. So I know the housing development team had to go through a very protracted and vigorous process in being able to not only set us up to make bids, but attract that funding. So we're looking for that to have 20 new homes, hopefully completed in the next financial year. Two other schemes that have been ongoing that you're aware of is the Sydenham Garage scheme and Penley House site development scheme. Now, it's likely that both of those schemes need a revision to the costs. So what I've done in here is included the draft estimated costs of what it could be, but of course we need another report to come forward to the executive with a more detailed plan, so it's included here for more illustrative purposes so that these can go forward. So yeah, there's a lot of growth in the plan this year for both revenue and capital. We should get more information on on the stock condition survey next year. And yes, there is an increase in rents, but we're following government guidance. So yeah, thank you very much. I'll hand back to Alison now. Thank you
very much, Mrs. Pascoe. Thank you, Alison.
Thank you. Thanks, Janet. Yeah, just to summarise, so you know that we are presenting a really positive picture. There are key risks. Clearly, as Janet said, the rent levels are quite high this year because of the inflationary increase. But as a council, we've always use the inflation increase as our sort of almost our policy for setting rent. And we're still waiting for the condition survey figures. And there are, you know, obviously there are outside impacts that could affect the figures that were presented to you today. But it is a robust business plan, and there is some, you know, the balances that we're presenting are not really close to minimum balances. So there is some slack there, some flexibility. Just in terms of the future, obviously we will be a single council from 1st of April 2023, and as part of that we will need to bring the housing revenue accounts together. It's only Sedgemoor and Somerset West and Taunton that have got their own housing stock. So Janet and I are sort of leading on a finance work stream in terms of the local government reorganisation, in terms of bringing those housing revenue accounts together. So there will be lots of work that goes on there. It's really important that we continue with our plans in terms of development, etc., because we don't want to stop any of that. So it's important that it's built in, which it is built into our 30-year business plan, and we continue you know, doing what we're doing in terms of what we're providing. There's lots of exciting things that we want to do as an authority. We've got the pilot project in terms of the zero carbon agenda, and you know, if that proves successful, then I'm sure we'll be coming back asking for additional funding to continue with those works. There's remodelling of the current stock and reviewing the decent home standard, continuing with that. As I say, it's an exciting future with the housing revenue account, and we're presenting a sort of, you know, good financial picture to actually fulfil some of those aspirations. I don't think there's anything else needs to add to the report at this stage, but happy to take questions.
No, thank you very much. I had some questions and you've answered every one of them. I'd just like to say that it's in a really good position, and it's so good to know that we take our stock condition survey so seriously, as every housing stock should do, and that's really very pleasing, and thank you for the work you've done. Now, I believe it's Councillor Revens that had his hand up. Is it still your hand, Councillor?
It is my hand, Councillor Slocum. I didn't know whether you wanted to go to Cabinet members first, but I'm happy to take the opportunity.
You were the only one identified, so I'm happy to go to you first, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Slocum. Thank you, Alison, for an excellent report. You alluded to the situation post-unitary just at the end there. I was aware that there was some doubt as to whether a mix of housing provision is able to be provided under a unitary council. I'm very aware that we have an Almo here in Sedgemoor and in Taunton Dean. They have direct housing stock. Are we able to are we able to shed any light on that situation going forwards as to how those two can be reconciled?
My understanding is that we can continue into the new authority with different operating models. So for Sedgemoor, we've got the Almo. For Somerset West and Taunton, it's an in-house provision, but that is part of a local government reorganisation work stream and will be looked at as we go forward. It won't be resolved for vesting day because there's a huge amount of work that would need to be done to alter any of those arrangements. And you know, as we keep saying, we've only got 15 months, but it will be reviewed. But we can go into the new authority with the two different operating models.
Thank you, Chief Executive.
Thank you, Leader. Just to add to that, there's been a number of local government reorganisations, both in Cornwall and more recently with certainly Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole and the others, where there were multiple models. The issue is that there can only be one single HRA, but we are allowed to run more than one model for the management of the housing stock thereafter, although obviously it's in the wider interest to have a single model going forward in the long term. So I'm sure the new authority will be getting to that at as early a time as they possibly can.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Brown, for that clarity. Thank you very much. Now going to the executive members, Councillor Lance Duddridge.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Leader. I'm just following on from what the Chief Exec said. We have Homes in Sedgemoor. I've been obviously having talks with Somerset West and Taunton Housing Department on closer ways of working and sort of exchanging views on best practice. So it is in the works. But as the Chief Exec said, in one way, there's no rush, you know, from a legal point of view to resolve this, because as he said, Dorset, I think, has still got their own Almo 3 or 4 years after unitary. And I also think with the good state of the HRA, we probably could be in a position to, up to a point, shape the future of the housing in the new authority. So really, it's all very positive at the moment, I think.
Yes, thank you. Mrs. Turner, do you wish to respond to that, or I think it was more of a statement, wasn't it, really? Thank you very much. Thank you. Do I have any other? Thank you, Councillor Duddridge. That's a really bright, cheery thought, I think. Do we have any other members of the executive wish to ask a question? No, I don't think so.
Yes, Deputy Leader, if I can make a very brief comment. I want to endorse everything Janet Pascoe has referred to about this Bigwood and Staples site. I think that is a wonderful feather in our caps. And to have achieved the size of grants that we have done, the housing delivery team should be congratulated for their efforts on that front, and especially in the teeth of contrasting labour issues and health issues within the team. It's an extremely valuable exercise that and other authorities are pointing the finger at us in terms of their almost envy is the word I want to use, but I wanted to specifically congratulate that team for their efforts on that front.
Thank you very much.
My disappointment, if I may add, just my disappointment with the loss of the new homes bonus, or as used to be, £73,000 is an awful lot of money to lose. And I know that money trees don't grow in any climate, but nevertheless, we've had a particularly difficult climate to grow in. And I'm disappointed that we now will see the end of that particular scheme. But in so doing, if I may be allowed prematurely to second the motion for the HRA account.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ginning. Yes, and you stole a bit of my thunder, but I have to say, I think our housing team have done a remarkable job, as all the team in these very difficult times. So yeah, great. Members, if there's no other questions, then we have 4 recommendations before you. I won't read them out because they're lengthy, but but you've obviously had time to read this report, to read the appendices. So with no further ado, I will propose the recommendations, and I have Councillor Gilling who is going to second it. Do we have anyone against, please? Over to Mr. Melhirish.
Thank you very much, Deputy Leader. That's again clearly a unanimous recommendation through to the Leader of Council with those 4 recommendations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and thank you again, Mrs. Turner and Tanya. But I never get your oh, sorry, and Janet. Thank you, both of you. I never get one of them surnames correct. So thank you so much for the work you've done. Thank you. We now go to item 8, which is the recommendations from the Community Scrutiny Advisory Committee on the 22nd of November regarding what can be done to reduce the impact of balloon and sky lantern releases. And we also have our Chairman of Scrutiny, which is Councillor Hilary Bruce. So thank you for being here today, Councillor Bruce. I will first go to our executive member, which is Councillor Keane, to present. Councillor Keane.
Thank you very much, and welcome to Councillor Bruce. As you can see, the recommendation here, we are not the only local authority to want to try and stop the use of these balloons on our own premises. In fact, the NFU wording and also the Marine Conservation Society are of similar wording, and the impact of all of these has been thoroughly discussed at the community scrutiny, and all members were in agreement. So I would strongly recommend that we accept the recommendation here that the leader write. There is no formal lobbying group, but we are not the only local authorities to write to the Secretary of State to ask if something more concrete can be put in place. So I would move this recommendation and all of the supporting information that is included with this package.
Thank you very much, Councillor Keane. Councillor Bruce, do you wish to add anything or anything you wish to say, please?
Thank you. Good morning, Deputy Leader and members of the executive. Good morning. Just really to add that obviously there is currently no legislation in existence against the release of balloon sky lanterns. The only action that can be taken is under littering once they've landed, if you can trace who launched them. So as a result, the main purpose of the council's policy really is just to control what happens on council-owned land and try to highlight the dangers that they pose. One of the outcomes from the committee was to try to sort of raise awareness and inform the public about the dangers that these pose. So that would be through social media campaign, etc., on the council's platforms, and try to liaise with town and parish councils to encourage them to adopt a similar policy. So the committee did vote to adopt the policy, to support the policy as it stands, but with these additional actions really to raise awareness. So for today, for the executive, it was felt that the council is limited in the impact that it can have beyond council-owned land without legislation being put in place by government. So obviously the recommendation to the executive today is for the Leader of Council to write a letter to the Environment Secretary of the UK Government calling for national legislation banning the release of helium balloons and sky lanterns. The committee also wished for the Leader to consider sending the letter to the MPs who cover the area of Sedgemoor and sending a copy to the Local Government Association. I don't think there's anything else to add, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bruce. Can I also thank yourself and Janet on the work you've done on this? Obviously, it's been a very contentious issue and we are limited with our legislation, but I do think any further help that the Leader can do by writing to the Secretary of State, I think will only be a bonus. So yes, thank you very much. Thank you. Can I now go to Councillor Healy, please?
Yeah, thanks for that, Deputy Leader. And, well done to you, Hilary. We've had this conversation at the last full council meeting, of course. What springs to mind, as you say, there's no legislation. Why don't we lobby the MPs you've rightfully done and get one of them to, or all of them, to take out a private member's bill, of course? And I don't think there'll be anybody talking that particular issue down, but you could go through the LGA, as we know. You've got the Fire Service Management Committee on there, but I'm fully behind what what you're trying to do, and maybe this is a way forward. Maybe we could take it that way. Contact our local MP, discuss it with him, and take it forward. And I'm really supportive that legislation could come out of this, because this is costing millions of pounds, of course, in fires. I'm not going to preach. You know where I'm coming from with this one, but I fully endorse what you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Healy. I think maybe this might be an opportunity. I have to ask Mr. Malhewish's advice on this. Whether can we put an amendment, or can we add just a sentence to say, and also to the MPs, our local MPs? Would that be possible, Mr. Malhewish?
If members are so minded to do that, then there will be no problem adding that additional wording to the recommendation to the Leader of Council.
Thank you very much. All members in favour of adding that small amendment to add to our local MPs?
I would support that amendment.
Thank you very much, Councillor Keane. Thank you. And thank you again, Hilary, for the work you've done. Councillor Bruce, sorry. Thank you so much. It has been a difficult situation, and I'm sure there'll be many people very pleased with the work that's been done here. So thank you.
Thank you. Can I just add very quickly, I do hope that a similar policy will be adopted by the new unitary authority as well. Obviously, all the policies are going to be reviewed. There's going to be a work stream on that, I suppose. But yeah, I do hope that will become a county-wide policy as well.
We do hope so, and I think they'll be listening to a lot of things that go on in Sedgemoor. So I think you're absolutely right. Okay, so do we have anyone against the recommendation, please? So that's no, we don't. So that's clearly carried. Mr. Malhewish, are you happy? I think I've stole your thunder.
Yes, that's fine, Deputy Leader. Just to confirm, the recommendation will go through with the additional wording that recommending the Leader of Council writes also to local MPs and the Local Government Association on the line set out in the recommendation in the report.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Malhewish. Mr. Malhewish, now you need to advise us on the next report, which I believe is an exempt report, you're saying?
No, the next report is the urgent item, which is the capital funding report that the portfolio holder for customer access and digital delivery, and Craig Wilkins is here as the IS manager, will present to you. This is a report that's seeking additional expenditure. So at this moment, as this is an urgent item, would need to hand over to the portfolio holder. I would just also add that as this is an urgent item, in accordance with the Constitution, the matter was circulated, the report was circulated, and consent has been granted by the two chairs of the Overview and Scrutiny Committees that this matter can come before the Executive as an urgent item. So it's over to the portfolio holder via yourself now to introduce.
Thank you, Mr. Malhewish. You stole my words now, so that's thank you so much. I'd like to hand over now to Councillor Duddridge, who's the Customer Access and Digital Delivery Portfolio Holder. Councillor Duddridge.
Thank you, Deputy Leader, and I'll add my thanks to the two chairmen of the scrutiny committees for allowing this to come forward as an urgent item. The report supports the procurement of new hardware, which will form a major part of the IS strategy, which the Council adopted last year. The new equipment will mitigate against potential failures and will aid us in the continuance of business as usual, as well as putting us on a firm footing when we enter the new authority. There's some technical detail I'm sure Mr. Wilkins will be able to answer, but I'm quite happy to take any questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Duddridge. There's no doubt about it. We all say as portfolio holders, each of our portfolios are the most important, but we are nothing. We are nothing without IT and hardware. As we've plainly seen, we've got us through this pandemic with the great work that's been done from your section and obviously Mr. Wilkins. So I thank you for that. Mr. Wilkins, would you like to add anything, please, or would you something you'd like to say at this period of time?
Good morning, Deputy Leader, Chief Exec and other members of the Executive. I think the report says everything really in terms of we just need the investment to proceed, and just to reconfirm the investment's not wasted in terms of local government reorganisation. The assets will still be required, they'll still be utilised fully by members. It just may mean that the equipment may be dispersed across the wider new Somerset Council moving forward. I suppose the critical path is to get an order in. As you will well know, supply chains are not easy at the moment, and with potential future lockdowns, it may extend the sort of delivery timeframes that we've got coming from our manufacturers. Most of the equipment's manufactured in China. We just need to get the order in, to be honest, really, and I can't do that unless I've got the funds earmarked to facilitate. There is another question from finance where we get the capital funding from, and I've had various discussions, and the view is to I think approach the funding via borrowing rather than taking it from the community development fund, but obviously Alison can advise further on that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wilkins. Thank you. This is going to be an early Christmas present for you, I can see, because we need to get you to crack on and get this work.
Yeah, basically the order just needs to go in. The equipment won't probably turn up until February, but
okay, a late Christmas present. Okay,
yeah,
thank
late
you.
Christmas present.
Thank you. Thank you. Mrs. Turner, do you wish to add anything just to clarify those points?
Yeah, just to say that there are various options in terms of how we can fund this, and I think we're now putting together. We're going to now put together the final budget for sort of 22-23. So if it can sort of be left to us really to have a look to see which is the best way of funding it, I'll sort of give you reassurance we can fund it. It's not an issue, but we'll look at the best way of funding it sort of for the overall budget, if that's
Thank
okay.
you very much. Well, I'm very confident in this, and I'd like to thank you again for, like I said, you've kept us afloat in these very difficult times, and we've all been able to carry on having meetings and doing the service that we need for this council. So we couldn't have done it without this. So I thank you very much. I'm very happy to second the recommendation. The portfolio holder, do you wish? Is there any questions first from anyone? Is everyone happy? Seems like it. Portfolio holder, do you wish to move the recommendation? You may have joined.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. I'm very happy to move the recommendation. Also add my thanks for everything that Craig and his team's done over the last 18 months. Couldn't have done it without.
No, absolutely. Please pass that to all the team, as I've personally done as well. And I'm happy to second the recommendations I've said. So is there any against the recommendations, please? No, it seems like it's over to you, Mr. Malheirish.
Thank you very much, Deputy Leader. So that's just to confirm that was a unanimous recommendation to full council to approve the expenditure for the purchase of the necessary hardware. Just to say that this is a decision that will need to be resolved by full council once the leader has confirmed he's happy with the recommendations. And in that regard, there will be an amended agenda for the full council meeting this afternoon, which will include this item and also a couple of other resource bids that didn't appear on the agenda from the medium-term financial plan that was approved last week at the 15th of December meeting of the leaders' decisions. So that will be an amended agenda coming out later this morning, just with those additional items in, so that the necessary funding and resource bids that need to be allocated in place so that orders can be made and works can be gotten on with in certain areas can be done before the end of the year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Malheirish. Thank you. And I no doubt you'll send that to me in due course. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Right, this is where I jumped the gun a bit. The next item is the exempt session. Over to you, Mr. Malheirish.
Thank you very much. And we need to move into exempt session because the next report contains information regarded as exempt by paragraphs 4 and 5 of the Local Government Act. And in the normal circumstances, we just would normally say, just to confirm, there are no members of the public present on the call, and I think it's just members, and we would normally ask for members and officers just to sort of, by putting a hand up, just to say that they've got no one else with them in the room at the time, because obviously we're just about to hear exempt confidential information. So rather than go around everybody, if everybody is happy, then just move into that exempt session.
Thank you. I think everyone is happy. I've had no indication from anyone. Thank you very much.
That's the case.